Hi everyone, today I want to talk about applying for a job. In the era of AI, this is becoming really difficult, time-consuming, and soul-crushing. This is a bad experience. I am myself a hiring manager, and I know how hard it is to get a job and how difficult it is to apply for so many positions. So I decided to open source one of my personal tools, which I call CV Pipeline. And I want to share this with you and introduce you to how you can improve your CV generation process and make it less painful. So to situate this video, the job search reality now is pretty bleak. Based on the standard CV and ZTHR statistics from 2024, most of the CVs that you are sending are getting completely no responses at all. 70% of those you don't hear from any company. Then about 20% you have automated rejection emails. Typically AI is in the loop. Maybe you're not giving enough keywords. Your CV somehow doesn't go through the cracks, and only 5% of the CVs that you send results in a human interview. So how can we do this easier? How can we increase our chances of getting an interview? In this video, I will not talk about various tricks and heuristics which you can use to increase your chances of landing a job, but rather try to remove pain points and toil related to maintaining CVs, often for several positions, and making sure you can produce a high quality PDF that you can send to a headhunter or a company you're applying for without much hassle. So I want to address something obvious, and this is kind of bad both from the applicant perspective and the recruitment agency. Most of the CVs nowadays are written using AI. This is bad from various reasons, mostly because AI produces averaged pattern data and AI slop. Your CV will not really stand out that much, and often it can make errors. People don't really read it thoroughly, so it can lead to you being perceived as unprofessional. But at the other hand, there is increasing amount of tools used by recruitment agencies to sift through all those CVs. So both parties are using AI. Now, I am not saying that using AI is incorrect, far from it. However, using AI in the right way makes much more sense. So what I'm proposing and what I'm sharing with you, also how I maintain my CVs throughout multiple various positions that I've held and throughout time, instead of letting AI create your CV, rather let AI change or add some data that you can easily see and control. So this data, it's a base data about you, your work history, your certifications, your education, your accomplishments, and you can store this data in a simple YAML file. Then you have a pipeline that we will look at in detail and is the core of what I'm sharing with you all. And this pipeline produces a high quality professional PDF. And with this, you don't rely anymore on AI just putting something together and you copy pasting it. You rather control your data. There are certain validations you can perform, and you are fully in charge of your data. And there is an automated process that produces at the end the PDF that you need. So the first technology that I want to introduce you to, if you don't know about it, is LaTeX. LaTeX was created in 1985 by Leslie Lamport, and the word text comes from Greek techni, and it translates to art and craft. So it literally translates to Leslie Lamport, first 2 letters of his name, or surname rather, and then text. And what it really is a very powerful, albeit complicated system that can help you manage the placement of elements on the document. Think about it like HTML, but for PDF documents. It can describe very precisely what font should be used, what kerning, how the layout would look like. And this is very widely used in a professional and scientific academic standards. And it's perfect for PDF output. You don't need to output PDF out of it. You can use LaTeX as is, but we are going to generate a PDF out of it. So instead of using things like Google Docs and writing something inside of a Google Doc and relying on a PDF generation there, you can take much more control over how you want your CV to look like. So in Google Docs or any other, Microsoft Office or whatever, you essentially have to manually arrange items on the screen, and then kind of in a completely opaque way, there is a PDF generated somehow. You don't have control over how it's generated. It just appears when you download it as PDF. Whereas in LaTeX, this is all code base. There is quite a manual effort related to creating LaTeX documents. However, what I'm using is essentially automating this step. You will see this in a moment in a demo. So it's okay to use Google Docs, absolutely, but you are losing on really professional PDFs with a good kerning and layout, and also it's out of your control. It's just a document somewhere on somebody else's server. And this you can, of course, do manually and locally on your computer. There are other things like much better typography, much better placement, layout, and so on. That's just on LaTeX itself. So if you know, you can simply skip forward a few minutes, but if you don't, I want to talk a little bit about what is a pipeline. Pipeline is essentially a set of steps that takes an input, performs certain actions that can modify the input or produce side effects, and at the end ends up with a series of outputs. So that's a generic definition of a pipeline. You can apply it to anywhere, and in our case, we are using the idea of a pipeline to produce our PDFs, our CVs. We are doing it in GitHub, and set of automated steps takes the data from somewhere, in our case YAML file, performs certain actions and validations, transforms the data and outputs CVs, and then we can consume those artifacts in GitHub release or other ways. So just to set the stage, why this is important, because we don't have to do those steps manually. It's a pipeline that runs for us, and it's automated, and it is behaving as expected every single time. Again, if you notice, you can skip, but really quickly, what are GitHub Actions? This is something what we are going to be using, or what the tool is that I am going to show you uses. It is simply a way where you can execute these pipeline steps. GitHub provides so-called action runners, which are just normal virtual machines running typically Ubuntu or other base images. And as on your computer, you would perform a set of steps to transform files and produce PDFs. This is literally what's happening, but instead of on your computer, it's happening somewhere in the cloud. In case of GitHub, it's mostly in Azure infrastructure. So this is for free. For public repositories, for private repositories, to some extent, you have free amount of minutes, I believe 2,000 minutes per month to run an action, which is more than enough to do what we are going to do. So it's all for free. You can use it. and it's very, very easy to get started. Now, when we deliver our PDFs, what we are going to do, we are going to take advantage of GitHub release system. This is designed to release binaries or Docker images or other artifacts that are essentially most of the time like a program artifacts. We are going to use the same mechanism to produce PDF files. One more note about how this is done. We are going to use something called GitHub templates. It is a special kind of repository that you can use to create your own repository off of it rather than just copy it. And this template repository will give you all the necessary mechanism and machinery to make sure that your CVs are created. So when we apply for jobs, it's very rarely that we do it for a single position. Sometimes the positions require slightly different persona, slightly different focus. Maybe you want to apply to a software developer position, but your skills also overlap with the DevOps engineer or a cloud engineer role if you work in software. And you don't want to send the same CV to every single role. You want those CVs to be tailored and to emphasize different things for different role. That results normally in a lot of manual labor or just, creating various versions of your CVs and you forget which ones are which and it's just a mess. Another important part is the CV itself. Because of a ubiquity of a document as is, you send a CV to someone and this CV must somehow stand out. And this is a very subtle problem because you cannot really make it too crazy, but also you want to somehow stand out. So what I found out is that it's really useful to understand some basics of colors and font and layout. And here I'm quoting a few sources that essentially provide some insight into data-driven research about what colors and what layout and what fonts are associated with what traits. So if you want to focus on, showing more technical prowess and more like reliability, you would use, more like blue, dark blue colors. And this is just association that we have in our brains. Very easy to use, and I am using this in my templates to great success. This is just something that our brains are wired to interpret in a specific way. And this is backed by psychological research. So you can do certain tricks and science-backed research to make sure that your CV stands out. So, as I mentioned earlier, you typically would have several personas for your CV, but this is the same relation as having a template template data that renders differently for different things. That's why we are separating the data, so various YAML files which serve as the data from the PDF generation pipelines. Because PDF generation pipelines are simple templates. And each template will have different colors, different placement, different header names and fuzzies and so on. So you can mix and match and create your own templates for your own needs with various colors and placement and so on. It requires a little bit of LaTeX, but you can ask AI to help you create a different LaTeX template based off of what you see in this repository, and it should be very easy to do. So how this whole template works. And I will show this in a second in a quick demo, but I want to guide you through the set of steps that happen behind the scenes. We have YAML files that contain our personal data, which is our education, work history, certificates, and so on and so forth. Then there's a Python generation script that takes this data and generates a LaTeX file. LaTeX file has a text extension, and then a next step compiles several PDFs based off of this data and a template that our Python generation applies to the LaTeX compiler. Okay, once this is done, we are testing that everything works. Most of the time, I'm focusing the tests whether the data provided in YAML is correctly reflected in the resulting PDF. So there are tests that verify that the data is valid and the data is exhaustively applied to PDFs. Once everything is done, we are going to perform automated release and have our CVs ready to download or give a link to someone if we want to host this publicly. Automated quality assurance, I was talking about it a moment ago. One note here, I try to create this GitHub template in a way that is easy to use, even not for technical people that are familiar with pipelines and GitHub. However, if you are a little bit more technically inclined, it's relatively easy. If your repository is public, you can use GitHub web pages to host and render your PDF CVs as is in the web page itself. And then you can just provide a public link to someone to view your CV as a PDF. Definitely very useful and very quick way to distribute your high quality CVs. However, it requires a little bit more knowledge about how GitHub works. If you're interested in it, I'll be happy to follow up with another quick video, or just let me know in the comments. I'll share my pipelines for it as well. All right, so that was just the way of introduction. Let me show you how this looks and how it works. So if you navigate to my GitHub user and then CV pipeline template repository, you will see that there's quite big README that explains how this works. So you can read about various elements here and so on, but I'm gonna guide you really quickly through how this is set up. So first we can see here we have releases on this right hand side. When I click releases, they are automated, and you can see that we have these PDF files that are released every single time. So we have this Cloud Engineer PDF, and this is simply a lorem ipsum style template that shows us high quality CV with links using font that is proven to draw attention and kind of show the right context. You can of course tweak all of those things the way they appear on the screen. You can have your own template. It's not that difficult to do, but those come pre-built and you can use them. Now, how do we manage the data? So the only thing that you have to change if you like the templates as they are is just the data. So you go to a data folder, and in here you see various YAML files. So if we look, for example, at experience, so this is super simple YAML. We just say in a few key value pairs in YAML, this is just a list, and it says whatever the title was, company, location, start date, and so on and so forth. This template is fixed. I think it's sufficient to provide the necessary data that is typically present on CV. All of this obviously can be extended. I'm happy to have PRs, and if you're interested, you can contribute to the template repository. So there are currently several data packets, and all of those packets are glued together using scripts and CI. So how would you create your own CV? Very easy. You have this use this template button, create a new repository. Then I would just choose an owner. So this will be on my org, and maybe cool CVs. I can add description here. I can have public visibility and create a repository. And it would take a moment and go to your org or your user account in GitHub and create a repository exactly with the same content. And you can see that immediately we are triggering here a pipeline and it will just work. So we could go to data and maybe go to personal data, and we're going to change something here so I can edit the file right in GitHub, and maybe let's say cloud native, and then corner, something like this. So we changed the data for our CVs. I can commit the changes and I can say change name, something like this. I'm committing it directly to main branch, something you shouldn't do, but I want to show you how it will create. I've committed those changes to my cool CVs repository. It will take a while for the pipeline to render, so it's still running the previous build and giving us this nice CV pipeline. So that's it. That's the whole process. This repository can be private, can be public, and in a moment when the pipeline finishes, we will be able to see the releases here. So I want to go back to the presentation for a moment and show you some resources. Obviously, the pipeline template that I just showed you, you can use it, tweak it however you want, use it as is. I hope you've seen that it's very helpful and very easy to create your own PDFs, your own CVs. I highly encourage you to read more about LaTeX. It's a really interesting project. It's 40 years old, and it's been with us for a long time. It's used very broadly in academia, everywhere really where high quality, good style and layout documents are important. It also can render math equations and all kinds of interesting things. If you want to read about GitHub Actions, that's also a very useful skill to have, and it's not that difficult to understand. And you can find more of my content on my personal webpage, cloudrumble.net. Please give it a visit and see if there's anything you like. So that's it for today. Again, just to summarize, my goal with this is really to give you something I've been using for quite a while, and it's proven to be working for me. I just made a template out of it, so now you can have the same pipeline and professional looking CVs for yourself. It's very easy to extend, whether by adding more templates, adding more CV types or targets. I haven't specifically spent too much time on making it very easy to extend. This is just like, for now, it is what it is. I thought that those 3 types of CVs are already interesting, but if there is an interest in extending it, first of all, I'm happy to accept PRs, but I'm also totally okay to add a little bit more easier way to contribute to the repository and extend it with additional templates, maybe cover letters or whatever makes sense. So with this, you have a very powerful way where you are fully in control of what kind of documents are being produced by the pipeline that you fully control. So let's see in the meantime whether our release is ready. It typically takes a while, but now we are done. So we have this CV2, and you can see our CVs are generated, and we have cloud native corner instead of John Doe because we changed it in the YAML file. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, see you in the next one.